Pause for a moment. When was the last time you sat alone, not with your phone, not with noise, but with your own thoughts? We often look at the world and say, everything needs to change. But rarely do we ask the most important question, what needs to change within me? Reflection is not about blaming yourself. Self-improvement is not about perfection. It is about honesty with yourself and courage to grow. Today, let us take a journey inward, because the greatest transformation begins there. Self-accountability is one of the most powerful yet most neglected qualities a person can develop. It requires honesty, courage, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths about oneself. Many people spend their lives searching for reasons outside themselves to explain their failures, their anger, or their lack of progress. They blame circumstances, people, society, or destiny, yet true growth begins only when a person pauses and says, "Let me look at my own actions first." This moment of self-reflection is not meant to crush the soul, but to awaken it. When a person takes responsibility for their choices, they reclaim control over their life rather than handing it over to excuses. Self-accountability teaches a person to examine intentions before actions. It pushes one to ask difficult questions. Why did I react that way? Was I sincere, or was I seeking validation? Did I speak the truth, or did I protect my ego? These questions are not signs of weakness, they are signs of maturity. A person who holds themselves accountable understands that improvement does not come from pretending to be flawless, but from acknowledging shortcomings and working on them quietly and consistently. This mindset transforms mistakes into lessons rather than sources of shame. When someone practices self-accountability, they stop measuring their growth by comparing themselves to others. Instead, they compare today's self with yesterday's. This creates inner stability because progress is no longer dependent on external praise or criticism. Such a person becomes careful with their words, mindful of their behavior, and conscious of their responsibilities. They understand that every action has consequences, and every choice shapes character. Over time, this awareness builds discipline, patience, and humility. Self-accountability also strengthens relationships. A person who can admit, "I was wrong," without defensiveness earns respect and trust. They do not rush to justify their mistakes or shift blame, but take ownership and strive to improve. This quality softens hearts, resolves conflicts, and creates an environment where growth becomes mutual rather than competitive. It allows a person to apologize sincerely and change meaningfully. Most importantly, self-accountability nurtures inner peace. When you stop lying to yourself, your heart becomes lighter. You no longer carry the burden of pretending or proving. You become focused on refining your character, correcting your habits, and aligning your actions with your values, knowing that real success begins within long before it appears on the outside. Recognizing one's own faults before pointing at others is a sign of deep wisdom and inner strength. It is easy to notice the mistakes of people around us. Flaws appear loud and obvious when they belong to someone else. Yet when it comes to our own shortcomings, we often become blind, defensive, or unwilling to accept the truth. The human tendency is to protect the ego, to justify actions, and to shift responsibility so that we do not feel uncomfortable. However, real growth begins at the moment a person chooses honesty over pride and reflection over accusation. When you examine yourself before judging others, you create a foundation for personal transformation. This practice requires humility because it forces a person to accept that they are not perfect, regardless of their knowledge, status, or intentions. Before criticizing someone's behavior, one must ask, "Have I ever done something similar?" Before highlighting someone's weakness, one must consider their own struggles that remain hidden from public view. Often, the faults we see most clearly in others are the same flaws we have not yet confronted within ourselves. Recognizing this softens the heart and replaces harsh judgment with understanding. It turns criticism into compassion and arrogance into self-awareness. When a person focuses on correcting their own faults, their energy is used productively rather than destructively. Instead of wasting time discussing what others should fix, they invest effort into refining their character, improving their conduct, and strengthening their discipline. This shift changes the way one responds to conflict. Rather than reacting with anger or blame, they respond with calm introspection. They learn to pause and ask whether their words, tone, or behavior contributed to the situation. This habit develops emotional intelligence and prevents unnecessary disputes. Recognizing one's own faults also creates credibility. Advice coming from a person who works on themselves carries weight and sincerity. People are more receptive to guidance from someone who admits their mistakes and strives to improve, rather than someone who constantly highlights the errors of others while ignoring their own. Such a person leads by example, not by accusation. Their presence becomes reassuring rather than intimidating, and their words inspire change rather than resistance. Most importantly, this practice protects the heart from arrogance. When you are busy fixing yourself, you have little time to look down on others. You understand that everyone is fighting unseen battles and learning at their own pace. This awareness cultivates patience, empathy, and balance, allowing a person to grow internally while maintaining peace with those around them. Small, consistent changes are often underestimated because they do not produce immediate or dramatic results. In a world that celebrates instant success and visible breakthroughs, people overlook the quiet power of steady effort. Yet true transformation rarely comes from sudden shifts. It comes from habits repeated daily, choices made intentionally, and discipline practiced when no one is watching. A person who commits to improving even a little each day is laying the foundation for lasting change, even if progress feels slow at first. What matters is not the size of the step, but the direction and the consistency with which it is taken. Consistency trains the mind and strengthens character. When a person chooses to correct one small behavior, control one reaction, or improve one habit, they begin to rewire their thinking. These small actions build confidence because they are achievable and sustainable. Instead of overwhelming oneself with unrealistic goals, small changes create momentum. Over time, this momentum grows into discipline, and discipline becomes a natural part of life. The individual no longer relies on motivation, which comes and goes, but on routine and commitment. Small changes also protect a person from burnout and disappointment. Many people give up on self-improvement because they expect instant results and become discouraged when they do not see them. Consistent effort teaches patience and trust in the process. A person learns to value progress over perfection and persistence over speed. Even when results are not visible, internal growth is taking place. The mind becomes calmer, the heart becomes stronger, and the will becomes more resilient. Great transformations are simply the accumulation of countless small decisions made correctly over time. A kind word spoken daily reshapes character. A few minutes of reflection each day sharpens awareness. Choosing restraint once, then again, builds self-control. These changes may seem insignificant on their own, but together they redefine who a person becomes. Over months and years, these small acts create a life that is disciplined, balanced, and purposeful. Small, consistent changes also make growth accessible to everyone. Not everyone can change everything at once, but everyone can change something today. This mindset removes excuses and replaces them with responsibility. It reminds a person that progress is always possible, regardless of past mistakes or current limitations. By focusing on what can be improved now, rather than what feels impossible, a person stays motivated and hopeful. Transformation then becomes a natural outcome of persistence rather than a distant dream or unrealistic expectation. Challenges are an unavoidable part of life, yet the way a person responds to them determines whether they become obstacles or opportunities. Many people view difficulties as punishments or signs of failure, something to escape or resent. However, challenges often arrive to expose weaknesses, refine character, and redirect priorities. When a person begins to see hardships as tools rather than burdens, their mindset shifts from frustration to learning. This shift does not remove pain, but it gives pain purpose, allowing growth to emerge from discomfort. Every challenge tests something within a person. Some tests patience, others test discipline, sincerity, or emotional control. When life becomes easy, character often remains unchanged, but when pressure is applied, hidden strengths and flaws surface. A challenge forces a person to slow down, reflect, and reassess their choices. It asks uncomfortable questions about reliance, habits, and intentions. Instead of breaking a person, these moments can strengthen them when met with awareness and resilience. Growth does not happen in comfort, it happens when a person chooses to rise despite difficulty. Using challenges as tools for growth requires responsibility rather than blame. It means asking, "What can I learn from this?" instead of "Who is at fault?" This approach empowers a person instead of leaving them feeling helpless. Even when circumstances are beyond control, attitude and response remain within reach. A setback can teach patience, a loss can teach gratitude, a delay can teach trust and perseverance. Each challenge carries a lesson suited to the stage a person is in, even if that lesson is not immediately clear. Challenges also build inner strength gradually. Facing repeated difficulties develops emotional endurance and mental clarity. A person who has endured hardship learns to appreciate stability and value peace. They become less reactive and more thoughtful, knowing that every storm eventually passes. This understanding reduces fear of future challenges because experience has shown that growth follows struggle. Over time, confidence is no longer based on ease, but on the ability to endure and adapt. When challenges are used as tools, they refine perspective. A person begins to differentiate between what truly matters and what does not. Ego weakens, gratitude deepens, and priorities become clearer. Complaints turn into reflection, and despair turns into determination. Instead of asking for a life without problems, a person learns to ask for strength, wisdom, and patience to handle what comes their way. In this way, challenges stop being barriers and become stepping stones toward maturity, self-awareness, and meaningful personal growth. Sincerity of intention is the foundation upon which genuine personal development is built. Without it, growth becomes superficial and short-lived, driven by appearances rather than inner change. Many people pursue self-improvement to gain approval, recognition, or admiration from others, but when the motivation is external, the effort often fades once praise disappears. True development begins when a person is honest with themselves about why they want to change. When the intention is sincere, improvement becomes a personal commitment rather than a performance for the world. A sincere intention aligns actions with values. It pushes a person to improve even when no one is watching and when no reward is promised. This kind of growth is quiet and deeply rooted. It focuses on correcting character, refining habits, and strengthening discipline, not for applause, but for inner peace and self-respect. When intention is pure, setbacks do not destroy motivation because the purpose was never validation from others. The individual continues striving, knowing that real progress is internal before it becomes visible externally. Sincerity also protects personal development from hypocrisy. A person who is sincere does not pretend to be better than they are, nor do they hide their struggles behind false confidence. They acknowledge their weaknesses and work on them consistently, understanding that growth is a process, not an image to maintain. This honesty creates balance and prevents burnout because there is no pressure to impress. The journey becomes about becoming better, not appearing better. When intention is sincere, self-improvement becomes more focused and meaningful. A person begins to choose depth over speed, quality over quantity. They are less concerned with how quickly change happens and more concerned with whether it is real. This mindset encourages patience and consistency, allowing habits to form naturally rather than through force. Growth rooted in sincerity withstands challenges, criticism, and delay because it is not dependent on external conditions. Sincere intention also transforms struggle into purpose. When difficulties arise, a person with clear intention does not abandon their path. Instead, they reflect, adjust, and continue. They understand that obstacles are part of refinement, not signs of failure. This clarity keeps the heart steady and the mind grounded. Personal development then becomes an act of integrity, where progress is measured by effort and honesty rather than comparison. With sincere intention, every small step forward holds value because it is taken with awareness, commitment, and truthfulness. Daily reflection is a quiet practice with powerful effects on the heart and mind. In a fast-paced world filled with noise, distraction, and constant demands, people rarely take time to pause and examine themselves. Without reflection, days pass mechanically, and mistakes are repeated without awareness. Reflection creates a space where a person can step back from routine and observe their thoughts, actions, and intentions. This awareness is the first step toward inner peace, because confusion often comes from living without conscious direction. Through daily reflection, a person learns to recognize patterns in behavior and emotion. They begin to notice what triggers anger, what drains energy, and what brings calm. Instead of reacting impulsively, reflection allows for thoughtful responses. This habit strengthens emotional control and reduces regret, because actions are no longer driven solely by impulse. Over time, reflection sharpens self-awareness, making it easier to correct mistakes early, rather than allowing them to grow into larger problems. Daily reflection also brings clarity of purpose. When a person consistently reviews their actions and decisions, they become more aligned with their values. They begin to ask whether their efforts are meaningful or merely habitual. This clarity helps in setting realistic goals and prioritizing what truly matters. Success then becomes intentional rather than accidental. A person who reflects daily is less likely to be distracted by temporary desires and more likely to stay focused on long-term growth. Inner peace grows when reflection replaces self-neglect. Taking time each day to evaluate oneself fosters self-respect and honesty. Instead of suppressing guilt or frustration, reflection allows these emotions to be processed and understood. This practice reduces inner conflict and creates balance between ambition and contentment. A person becomes kinder to themselves while still holding themselves accountable, which prevents both arrogance and self-criticism from taking control. Daily reflection also strengthens resilience. When challenges arise, a reflective person is better equipped to learn from experience rather than being overwhelmed by it. They can identify lessons, adjust their approach, and move forward with wisdom. This continuous learning shapes success that is sustainable and fulfilling. Over time, reflection becomes a guiding light, keeping the heart grounded and the mind focused. Through this consistent practice, inner peace and success develop together, rooted in awareness, discipline, and intentional living. Brothers and sisters, the journey of self-improvement begins not with the world around us, but with the world within us. When we hold ourselves accountable, recognize our faults before pointing at others, and commit to small, consistent changes, we set the stage for meaningful growth. Challenges no longer become obstacles, but teachers that shape our character, while sincerity of intention ensures that every effort we make is pure, lasting, and transformative. Daily reflection becomes the compass that guides us, helping us navigate life with clarity, patience, and purpose. The path of self-improvement is not always easy. It demands courage, honesty, and persistence. Yet, every step taken with mindfulness and sincerity brings us closer to inner peace, resilience, and fulfillment. When we embrace these principles, our actions align with our values, our hearts grow stronger, and our lives begin to reflect the best version of ourselves. True transformation is gradual, internal, and profound, and it starts with the simple yet powerful act of looking inward and striving to be better today than we were yesterday. Through reflection, accountability, and intentional growth, we not only change ourselves, but also positively influence those around us. Our lives become a testament to the power of conscious effort, and our journey inspires others to embark on their own path of self-betterment. In the end, the one who strives to refine themselves with sincerity and consistency builds a life of purpose, peace, and enduring success.